the dollar, the $10 bill, the $100 bill, which costs absolutely nothing to produce. It's a cheap piece of paper. They accept the paper and we get the produce. Wow. They agree. Normally, with other countries, they're not going to send you their produce, the products of their industry, unless you send an equivalent to them. It's an exchange. And in many cases, we still do that here in the United States with other countries. But if you have the dollar and the world wants it, you basically get something for nothing. The world holds the dollar, satisfied with that, because they need it for their currency support, and we get the fruit of other people's labor without having to give anything of our own in exchange. It's an extraordinary power, and guess what? Other countries would like to participate.
Let me ask you about the BRICS versus the G7. Isn't this, in a way, a bit of a charade, where the dominant behemoth power in the G7 is the United States, and the dominant behemoth power in the BRICS is China? And you hear about Brazil, you hear about Russia, you hear about India, but I mean, I'm just wondering whether these two gargantuans are sort of hiding the fact that we're in a, essentially a G2 world of China and the United States at odds, negotiating and masking what they're doing. How do you look at China versus the United States versus the G7 versus BRICS?
No, you're absolutely right. I don't know if I would use the word hiding, although I understand why you do that. It is a diplomatic politeness. You don't point out that you're the bigger of the partners in a deal. It's a polite, everybody knows, but you kind of don't say it. So let me first say you're right. The United States is the overwhelming dominant player among the G7, and China is the unquestioned equal dominant under the BRICS. All right, let's start with Russia, because it's a big, important player. The GDP of Russia last year in the neighborhood of, say, $2 trillion. These are rough measures, so it's the order of magnitude. That's all you have to keep in your mind. What is the comparison with the United States? The United States GDP this last year, about 24, 25 trillion. So you understand, Russia is 2 trillion, the United States, 24, 25 trillion. No contest. No one should ever imagine that either the Soviet Union in the past or Russia now is some kind of economic competitor of the United States. Never was, isn't now. Only the hype of the Cold War would make one think like that, and that's something you should correct if you've never had it explained to you. Now let's move to China. What's the GDP last year of China? Again, there are lots of debates about how you count it, but order of magnitude, 17, 18 trillion dollars. Way more important than Russia, but still not the size of the United States, although it's catching up. And most people believe at current rates of economic growth, China will surpass the United States by the end of this decade. And it has been catching up. Let's remember, 50 years ago, which in historical time is a moment, 50 years ago, China was among the poorest countries on earth.